You ready?
Yes, and Ryan, our zoning officer, he's joining on Zoom in case there are any questions this evening for that Chad can answer. Ryan is on Zoom, so the zoning officer can answer questions.
Very good. All right, we'll get the planning commission meeting started. I will hand it over to Jamie for nominations for, or I guess we have a roll call first.
Member Burns,
Here.
Member Farrell,
Yes.
Member Prather,
Here.
Member White,
Here.
Member Stevens,
Here.
Borough Manager Snyder.
Here.
All right, now I'll hand it over to Jamie for nominations for chairman and vice chairman.
So this evening we have to reorg. We'll have first a nomination and election of the planning commission chair. Do we have a nomination for the planning commission chair? Please state the name and person being nominated.
I nominate Ken Farrell.
I hear a nomination for Ken Farrell. Are there any other nominations for planning commission chair? Hearing none, I will close the nominations and we will vote. All those in favor of Ken Farrell being the planning commission chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, Ken, congratulations.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have a nomination and election of the planning commission vice chair. Do we have a nomination for the planning commission vice chair? Please state the name of the person being nominated.
Larry Burns.
I hear Larry Burns. Any other nominations? Great, I'll close the nominations. All those in favor as Larry Burns for the vice chair of the planning commission, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, congratulations, Larry.
All right.
And I'll turn it over to Chair Farrell.
All right, I'll make a motion or we need a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Do I have a motion to approve the February 24th meeting minutes?
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. All right, item number 3 is the core commercial text amendment submitted by WB Homes. And I know they're represented tonight, so.
Good evening. Chris Canavan with WB Homes, I'm the president of WB Homes. Bill Berger was with me. He's our land approval project manager. Thank you for having us this evening. We are the equitable owners of 41 North Market Street. If I could show me a thing. I think you're all very familiar with the property. It is property that is between the firehouse, which would be to the north on this plan, or top side of the Red Fox, and then the railroad property to the south and the adjacent parking lot. Owned by the estate of Howard Heckler. We are, as I said, equitable owners looking to purchase the property. As we were looking at the property and marketing it, just a full couple disclosure items, there had been some discussion at one point that provisions would be made for parking to allow for some additional parking for the fire company, which is immediately adjacent to it. As you recall, that property was transferred from the Howard Heckler to the firehouse many years ago. And in that there is some arrangement that possibly there was a ability for the firehouse to buy some of that ground to put parking. Fast forward to where we are today. We, as I said, have an agreement to buy this, and in the process, we're trying to accommodate the parking for the fire company and come up with an appropriate development plan for the site. So what we have proposed is to add, if you can go back one page, thank you, a residential use in the core commercial to allow for townhomes. When you have a site that's a minimum of 1 acre. We did go through an analysis which was provided with our application that should this provision be moved forward to Borough Council and adopted by Borough Council, where were the other opportunities where this could potentially be impacted? And there was very few. One of them is under construction behind the post office now, which I believe you're familiar with. And then it would be the Poppy's Tavern property, and then some combination of parcels where the Grandview Health Building is, and they're joined together. But really, there's very limited opportunity for 1 acre parcels within core commercial. So it would be a discrete, amendment when it, if it were to occur. I go to the next slide, please. So what we have proposed is a zoning ordinance that, as you all are quite aware, we're only here tonight for a text amendment. The plan is just a proof of concept of what could be built under that text amendment. Obviously, if the text amendment is adopted, we would be back in front of this planning commission to go through the full subdivision land development review and take all planning comments, et cetera, that would be appropriate at the time. But this is generally the proof of concept of how a project would lay out under this core commercial. It shows 15 residential units. All of them are owner occupied townhomes. These are 22-foot wide by generally 42 feet deep. Townhomes with 1 or 2 car garages, 2-car driveways. And then to the very left of this plan, we have a parking lot that shows 28 parking spaces on our property that would be an easement to the benefit of the firehouse to be able to park there and also provide overflow parking for our development. So it would be a shared opportunity for both with those 28 spaces. The ordinance text amendment that we put forth would consist of allowing townhomes up to 12 dwelling units an acre on a tract of a minimum of 1 acre. We're at gross tract area of 1.2514, which gets us to the 15 dwelling units that we have shown on the site. Just one last piece, and then we can talk. We've reviewed letters and we have some comments from your professional consultants. Generally, the design of the townhomes, 3-story townhomes with multiple architectural feature changes. These are very similar shown here. If any of you are familiar with where Country Bride and Country Gen is on Broad Street in Hatfield Township, directly behind that, we're just completed a 40-unit townhome development that has a similar product. If you want to see the property and product in real life rather than just in a picture, that would be the nearest where that architectural style would be provided. With that, that's the general presentation. Here tonight to discuss with the Planning Commission the feedback on the text amendment that we proposed. Mr. Camburn provided me with a markup of his text. Mr. Gerald's office also provided some comments in a County Planning Commission review letter, and I'll be happy to address those, Ken, in whatever manner you see fit.
Do you want to take comments from the planning commission first? Let me go first. The issue I have with it is the parking.
Okay.
We have a severe parking problem at Heather Meadows. You, I guess, basically providing 2 spaces per townhouse.
2 spaces in the driveway,
Yeah.
and then there will be a
The garage-
garage space.
The garage doesn't count.
Oh, let me just talk in practical standpoint. So from a zoning standpoint, yes, the zoning would be 2 spaces per, which is consistent with other areas within your town, your zoning ordinance. As I noted also, along with the 2 driveway spaces, there is a parking lot of 28 parking spaces. 20 of those in the arrangement with the firehouse, they were looking for 20 parking spaces, which would leave an additional 8, which would give us basically the equivalent of 0.5 overflow spots per dwelling per unit as well.
Okay, thank you, but I will tell you that nowadays with a family of 4, they have 5 cars. I mean, that's reality. You know, if you probably have a WB car for work, you probably have a little sportsy thing, your wife probably has a minivan, and I know your kids don't drive, but when they drive, I'm sure they're going to have a car. That's 5 cars, and that's reality. What I see happening is you have 2 per. Nobody parks in the garage. Maybe your little sporty thing will go in the garage, but for the most part, that's where people's junk goes. That's where lawn equipment goes. That's where all that stuff. I mean, we're living through it at Heather Meadows. I mean, that's a fact. It's a fact.
I just comment on 2 items that Ken just, this will be the subject of a homeowners association. Our homeowners association documents are very clear because we build a lot of townhomes in Montgomery County and in other locations. The cars for the unit owners are required to be parked on the primary dwelling unit's space. So they have to use their driveway and they have to use their garage. They are not allowed to use any designated overflow, and that's enforced by the homeowners association. Additionally, They do not have any responsibility for any exterior maintenance of their property, so there is no lawn equipment, there is none of those items, because it's managed by the homeowners association. So in our experience, the garage does get used for a car because of the lifestyle people are choosing, which is generally a maintenance-free lifestyle from that standpoint. And we have the additional provision of an HOA declaration that limits where they can park per the association, which I know some others have not and previously were never enforced in that regard.
Well, okay, I still don't see it. I think those overflow parking for the firehouse is going to be used by people in the community, people in your community. I think that, again, I've said it. I think it's severely underparked. I think it's a little aggressive for this lot. I understand what you're trying to do with the firehouse and the parking and all that stuff, and I get that, and I think that's admirable, and I think that's a good compromise. Certainly that land was donated by Howard for the firehouse, and keeping in the same vein of his charitableness. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think something that I would more like to see. You see these 4 townhouses in front here?
Yeah.
All right, they're turned facing the road. You could do the same thing and get 10 units with the parking in the back. That would give you a little bit longer unit, and that would give you some play area for each dwelling unit, some form or fashion. And I know it's not the density you're looking for, but it's still, probably a good compromise. It allows you to have potentially 4 spaces outside per unit, depending where you put the access drive. And I think it might be something to consider, and it might be something more that the appetite of the borough may be more willing to approve. Now, again, I'm only one person, and I certainly haven't spoken to any members of the planning commission. But certainly in looking at it, you have like no backyards or very little backyards, really no place for the kids to park. You have no recreation facilities or anything like that. How are you handling the stormwater management? You have no area to put stormwater management. There's going to be some. Even if it's less of detention, you still have to manage the stormwater coming off these units. And again, depending on what Chad comes up with, you still have that you have to deal with. And I know this is not an engineered plan. It's a sketch. It's for the rezoning, and I get that. But it's just, things that I'm looking at that if I was living in a community like that, it'd be very difficult to, I have a deck, I have no green area, I have no parking. If I want to get that extra sporty little car, where am I going to park it? And no, I disagree. People have flower beds, they might want to plant flowers and stuff like that. They're going to have shovels. They're still going to have something. They're going to have lawn chairs. They're going to have a fire pit, maybe, that they're going to drag out and drag back. You're still going to take up some room in this space. They're going to have an extra refrigerator. You're not going to, your homeowner's documents. No?
You don't prohibit extra refrigerators, that's for sure.
So, but you understand what I'm saying, that it's a stretch to say that you're going to have 2 cars in, 2 cars out. I don't see that happen. Maybe I'll split the baby with you and have 1 car in, 1 car for stuff, and then the 2 in the driveway. But that's still not a lot of parking.
I would only comment, I understand what you're saying about the green space. I understand that is not, the people who buy these units are not looking for that, quite frankly. We have our buyer demographic. This is not generally a family unit. It is a variety of different points in life unit when it comes down to it. You have your couples who are buying their first unit will move in here, maybe have their first child here, typically will move out before that second child might come. You have downsizers, believe it or not, who don't want to maintain their property. Fortunately, in some cases, divorcees who need to split households, things of that nature. You have a wide variety, but our number of people living in these units is generally, we're probably 1.75 to 2 average across a community like this, not.
And one of them is number 6, and that's just using terminology that can be found in the definitions. A lot of times, we use tract size, for example, but there is really no definition of tract size. What is a tract? Obviously, you can go on the internet and find out what that is, but what does that mean to the borough? So I'm recommending that we use net lot area as opposed to tract size, because again, that's a term that you can find and enforce in the ordinance. Your zoning officer can look to see what is a net lot area as opposed to what is a tract. Letter B, again, we're looking to change the terminology from gross to net. Letter C.
Mr. Chairman, would it be appropriate if, I'm good with his comments. Should I just pop in when there's one or two clarifications I have, or would you like me to wait till the end?
No, you can pop in.
Okay, just on the density per gross acre, I don't know if we need to clarify or not. There's no provision in the ordinance when you get into half a unit or 3/4 of a unit, whether you round up or not. I think it might be appropriate within that area to go net tract area, but then also, use your conventional rounding up or rounding down based on the percentage of a half unit one way or the other.
And I wouldn't have a problem with that, that's fairly common. And Mr. Canavan's point, normally you would round up, it's 0.5, obviously you go to the next one, so. I'm not sure how this, this sketch plan falls in line with that terminology, but for example, they're asking for 15, if it came out to 14.7 based on net, then it would be 15 anyway. But that's a good point, you should clarify whether you round up or round down. And I'll slow down a little bit, Chris, because that way you can interject as you want.
I'm good for quite a while now.
Okay, good. Letter D, same thing. I'm changing tract to lot line. Letter E, again, 45% of what? Maximum building coverage, doesn't say. Gross lot area, tract area, net lot area. I'm recommending net lot area. And for your understanding, the difference between gross and net, gross would be the deed of the property. And in many cases, the deed of a property would go to the center line of the road. Municipality, in a number of cases, would require ultimate right-of-way. So if the municipality accepts that ultimate right-of-way, that now becomes the tract line or the property line. So it makes sense to take the density on the after development property boundary as opposed to the pre-development property boundary. I don't think it would matter in this case because
for the nature of this development, just so you understand, there's about 2 feet of right-of-way that would need to be dedicated from what is currently dedicated. There's like a 23.5 foot half width, from center line over that would need to go to 25 feet. So there's like 2 feet. So the difference in net and gross tract area here is about 740 square feet, just as a discussion for this particular property.
So as part of a land development, the borough could choose to accept dedication of that 2-foot wide strip of land along this road, which certainly would make no sense whatsoever. But you could do that if you wanted to. It would be offered for dedication unless they request a waiver from doing so. And I think you have, 21 years to accept it after recording the plan. So again, it makes no sense to me at all to do that, but again, we have to look at the entire zoning district, not just this one property. But regardless, that's the point of that comment. Same thing with impervious coverage, letter F, 75% of net lot area. Again, clarifying the term of what the size of the property is. Letter I goes to the parking. They're requesting 2 spaces, which again is consistent with the rest of your zoning ordinance. 9 foot by 18 foot, again, is consistent with the rest of your ordinance. I'm just simply recommending clarifying that the cars cannot overhang a trail or a sidewalk. They're not proposing a sidewalk in this case, but just assume, for example, a development comes in where they want a sidewalk. We want to make sure that 18-foot long parking space does not overhang onto that pedestrian walkway. Letter J, I'm simply adding building separation. In their proposal, there's no side to side. And again, in this sketch plan, there is no side to side proposed, but we have to look at a scenario where there may be a side to side. Letter K on page 2. Just looking to clarify that no decks, porches, or patios can project past the side of the building. They're proposing language where it can project up to half the yard distance, I believe, in the rear. But if you have an end unit, you want to also make sure you're not projecting closer to a building or property line to the side as well. Sorry, Jamie. I speak with my hands, I'm Italian.
I'm not Italian, but I speak with my
I'm
hands.
not Italian. Letter L, I just think we need to clarify that there's a word in there.
Yeah.
It's comparing two different sections of the ordinance. We just want to make sure we understand which section that word refers to. And Chris, what were you suggesting with that?
Yeah, I think it should be, it conflicts between these architecture requirements and the architecture requirements of section 272108. It should be these or reference the ones below. The requirements below shall govern.
So, under letter L, there's a more defined set of architectural standards. The zoning ordinance already has a defined set of architectural standards. We just want to clarify that if they conflict, we're using the ones that are in this proposed text amendment as opposed to the other ones.
I'm sorry, Chad, can we go back to J, minimum building separation? What about the decks? Obviously, you're proposing, I think that's 55 feet between the rear buildings. And, I guess, you know, how big are the decks, what, you know, how, you know, I guess we don't want to be in a position where two decks are gonna be rear to rear, and then you're gonna be able to shake the guy's hand at the deck behind you.
Yeah, so Ken, if you go to page 2, letter K, number 1, that discusses the projection of the decks. And in this case, they're proposing no greater than 10 feet into the required building separations or yards. So that's where that will be addressed. So if you have back-to-back facing buildings, they require, in this case, rear to rear is 35 feet, and those decks could go no further than 10 feet off the building faces.
And I'd be open if you wanted to shrink that to 8. Would be
So that we want 15 feet in between decks.
All right, I missed that, okay, I apologize.
Now, I'm speeding. Anything else before I move along? So letter L, we're getting into the, again, the architecture. In this case, they're proposing at least 3 different changes in architectural materials or offsets, for example. I just simply added a comment there that, you know, say you require 3 different types of architecture. A builder doesn't just put one brick in there, for example, and say, hey, that's a different piece of architecture. So I'm suggesting a certain percentage of each type of architecture be specified.
The only challenge with that comes down to is it's both materials and feature changes. So a box bay, for instance, is a feature change, so you get variation on the front. On a percentage basis, that's not a material then to measure, it's just, it's a variation on it. So it just becomes a little challenging just to get down to exact percentages, which is why we try to go with 3. And oftentimes we put this in as something that's subject to the final approval of the planning recommendation of the planning commission and the borough council at the time of preliminary plan approval. That way there's a rendering that you can say, yes, we like what we see, or no, that's not enough, you only put 1 brick up there and it doesn't meet the intent of the ordinance. And I'd be fine with that as like final approval subject to, you know, reasonable review by the council.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable request. I don't know how we put that in here as far as language goes, or if there's something already in here that the final architectural should be approved by the borough council.
On the recommendation of the planning commission.
Yeah.
And I can add that to the paragraph under L as language, just so that there is some check on that. It's not just a.
Yeah, that'll meet the intent of my comment there. Moving down to number 4 under letter L. Rigid fascia lines at the roof of the building may not align more than 2 consecutive dwelling units for the front. I added or rear, and again, Katie, if you go back to the plan. I'm just looking at, for example, the units to the far right, where it's abutting the property leased by the borough. You're gonna want some sort of architecture on that face of the building as well.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, we have no issue with that, because you're adjusting at one, you're adjusting at the other, so.
Yep. And page 3, Number two, we're getting into the roadway or alley widths. You'll hear it called different things, driveway, roadway, alley. I guess, Chris, you want to call it an alley? Let's call it an alley.
It's not a street or a road. I think that's just to differentiate, because it's a privately held only for the residential servicing of those units.
Right. So they're showing 20 feet on this plan, and the text amendment requests 20 feet. I'm suggesting 24. It could even be 22. Your ordinance, your Saldo and other sections requires 24, but it can be reduced to 22 for, say, parking lots. I would think if it's sufficient for a parking lot, it should be sufficient for, you know, a lowly traveled alley such as this. My only concern is once you put trash cans out there at the road, making sure vehicles can turn in and out of those driveways. That's the biggest concern. And, you know, the language I'm proposing here is putting the burden on the developer to make sure turning movements are provided as part of the land development. That will be reviewed by your consultants, borough engineer, traffic engineer, emergency services. That would all be done during land development.
And upon review after we saw this, I mean, I'd be fine at 22 feet without any question on that. So even if you wanted to, you know, make it 24 with the ability to reduce to 22, don't even put 20 in there, we're fine with that.
That's the gist of my comments. Any questions on any of that?
I know, Chad, we had talked about it, or maybe it did come up in the county planning commission letter. I know that the architectural, oh, okay, I think that was under the side elevation. Yeah, I think you were trying to hit on that in L3, and then Eric hits on it again too, just so that the purpose behind what I was asking about is particularly the 3 side elevations that would face North Market Street, that we would introduce basically more of a front facade on what is the side elevation, by making sure there's at least 3 architectural changes on that, and the introduction of potentially introduction of a man door on that side, so there is the ability to have, you know, what looks like a front facade on the side elevation as well for continuity in the streetscape. We
So
did that
the side facing the road isn't just gonna be a wall of
Yeah.
vinyl siding. You know, it's gonna look nice.
And I think that your comment, and then I think that was in number 2 of the county planning review as well. I mean, the thought would be even to do like a little sidewalk out to the public sidewalk, so people could use that as a pedestrian orientation rather than just having it, you know, internal development.
Chris, do I recall you saying you put walls up between the road and the first driveway?
Yeah, what we've done in the past to try to, because the other streetscape issue you don't want to have is, you know, if you drive into Lansdale, you go over to Collegeville, and you look at what we've done, and particularly if you know where the 7-Eleven is in Lansdale, just behind that on Cannon Avenue, on either side of 2nd and Mill, we've developed Penn Square or Cannon Square. If you drive up there and you look down the alleyway, we've done wing walls that come out at the ends down here, so that when you're looking in, you have something to block the view of cars parked, and you really are just focused on something that's more visually appealing, and it's a much more attractive look that we've done. It becomes a much better look for the community, and then we can landscape in front of it, and it blocks that sort of heavy asphalt look, and it makes it look greener going up through there. So that would be something we'd be willing to do here as well, because we think that it makes the development look nicer.
Yeah, it certainly would.
Yeah.
Developers put them at the entrances of their developments as an architectural feature. So that would certainly look nice.
And just on the trash can issue, obviously, yes, trash cans will go out once a week, but our association documents also specifically require them to be stored. You know, they can't stay at the end of the driveway.
Since we're talking about the Montgomery County Planning Commission, do you have any comments?
No, I think that at least 2 of the comments were similar addressed by the engineers. Yeah, and that comment with the 3L too was just to make sure that there was mutually exclusive for what the 3 that apply to the fronts and the sides facing the street,
Right.
and 2 apply to the others. Because we also didn't want to do the facade facing the railway, it was
Doesn't
going
matter.
to be 3 on that one. And then we do, and we appreciate the comment, you know, that the sound and doing the sides here probably makes sense. And again, given, you know, the number of units you wanna get, you probably have to do them side anyway, facing the street. But there is definitely a pattern established on Market across the street in particular, and through most of the core commercial for the frontage of the buildings, you know, front and side facing the street. So yeah, anything we could do to again, if it was even adding a walkway or some additional interior door, certainly the wind walls would help. But anything that's gonna give that streetscape more of the traditional pattern that's, you know, reflective of what's across the street here and in other parts of the core commercial, I think would just, you know, be a better aesthetic view for the borough and that development.
We had a similar architectural feature. We built a development called Station Square at Ambler on Main Street in Ambler, just down from the train station. Basically very similar. We had Main Street on this side, the SEPTA railroad tracks on the back side, and built them similarly this, and did this exact same feature where we had front doors on the side so they could come out, and it created a nice streetscape along there. But this also gives us an opportunity to introduce some nice landscaping across the frontage there too, within that 20-foot front yard setback.
And this is probably, we didn't put it in the letter because I feel it's more of a private land development issue. But there is some potential here, and we're doing a conceptual plan for Memorial Park and the SEPTA property, and integrating the Liberty Bell Trail, you know, from where it ends now, behind the restaurant. And there's some potential then, because I think one of the feasibility studies actually showed it going along Market Street, to maybe incorporate the trail along the frontage of this property all the way down, you know, to past the fire hall, and through the borough property and the SEPTA property as well. So that's something that is a potential, and I think again would be an amenity to the development as
We
well.
talked about if there's need for additional easement or beyond what the width of the sidewalk is to
Correct.
make that happen, there would be space to do that within this area.
That was the only comment we made, and we just did, you know, we always took a look at the kind of compliance with the county comprehensive plan and the municipal comprehensive plan. And so I did just note that when we did, at least as part of the draft comprehensive plan, we did sort of an audit of the zoning, and we did a pretty intensive look at the core commercial and what some improvements to that might look like. And one of those was potentially in certain areas easing up on the mixed use requirement of buildings, because of the complexity sometimes of doing residential and commercial in the same building, but also the introduction of townhomes to appropriate locations within the core commercial as sort of another missing middle type of residential development, also owner occupied versus the apartments, which typically are not. But also, essentially apartments are still a commercial proposition in most cases, because it's going to be owned by a company and rented out. Whereas in this case, it's going to be built, owner occupied, and the developer, you know, leaves. So that is an advantage, and at least something on the right properties could be advantageous for the borough.
And Chairman Farrar, just, I do appreciate, and I keep trying to go over the parking and how to maybe help there. I did spend a little time while I was listening. I was looking on my aerial too about Heather Meadows, and I do recognize, obviously one of the challenges there is they only have one driveway spot, and then they have a garage spot, and they don't have the double width on there, and I have seen that as a problem. That was we had built up in West Rock Hill Township at one point, and they had a similar situation where they only allowed a certain amount of the front of a townhome to have parking in front of it, and in doing so, they had these single lane driveways, which in that case, you do run into the problem of people don't want to park in the garage, jockey a car out, and thus here, use a spot in the driveway, one in the garage, and you don't have to move a car to get out of the garage. And it does provide a little bit more flexibility from a parking standard. So I have seen that in the communities where you have single lane driveways, which tends to be where the challenge comes in versus the double width driveways that we're fixing, just as an additional comment. I know you recognize that.
I understand what you're saying, but
you just don't have to believe me.
Your reality, your reality and our reality are two different things.
Right.
At the end of the day, you're going back up to Lower Salford, and we live here. We live it. We breathe it. Heather Meadows is an issue. And
How's the newer one that Lennar built, Bennett's, was it Bennett's Court or whatever it was? That's a similar to this configuration with a two drive.
I haven't.
Parking is an issue at Bennett's
Is
Court.
it? Okay. Do they have any overflow besides the two driveways?
At the back and then a little bit, couple spaces on the side, 8 maybe, and if that.
10 plus.
Yeah.
A little more than 10.
Yeah.
They have two separate parking lots.
And you're coming before us with the text amendment. This is our opportunity.
Absolutely.
To get, you know, a revision to the text amendment.
Right.
So, I mean, I understand what you're saying and I can appreciate that. But
Is there a number, I mean, I guess this all comes down then, as you well know in a zoning code, how many spaces per unit is a reasonable number of spaces to require?
I mean, it's reasonable. I've seen it 3, I've seen it 3.5, I've seen it 2.
Right.
You know, pick your number, you know, I would like to see 4, but I know that's not gonna happen.
Right.
Okay, and that's my delusional world.
Right.
Okay, your delusional world is you have enough parking and that somewhere the truth is in the middle.
Well, and I am mirroring your existing zoning code with 2, so just, my
No,
delusion lives somewhere.
And I get that, and if you go.
I mean, 2.5, we'd be happy to put in for this particular use, because that gives you that overflow from that standpoint.
Yeah, but if somebody has an event at the firehouse and you have some overflow because somebody's having a Super Bowl party and somebody's renting the firehouse for a Super Bowl party, those 20 spaces are gobbled up pretty quick. And I know there's the SEPTA lot.
Right.
But
I really wish the Super Bowl would go away. That is the bane of my parking existence. That is, it's either Thanksgiving dinner or the Super Bowl. That is the bane of that existence for
But
parking.
one thing, you know, to keep in mind is that, you know, right now there's plenty of parking for the firehouse. But if I'm renting the firehouse and I can't park there and my patrons have to go to the SEPTA lot and they have to walk up, they'll find another place to rent. So reality is that could affect the business that the firehouse rent, you know, the hall business the firehouse has, just because some people, it will affect them. It's just like you have a shop, you have something, and if it's very difficult to get in or you can't park, or you're not gonna go to that place. You'll drive to go someplace where you can park right in front of the door.
Right.
It's reality. I mean, it's the creature of the people now, and I'm not saying that you're not gonna build a great development. I'm just saying is that you're gonna leave, you're gonna build something else in another township, and we're gonna be stuck, the police are gonna be stuck, public works is gonna be stuck with problems that we have, and then they're gonna come to the council meeting, and I lived through it. You know, I was a council person for well over 20 years, and I will proudly say that I was the one that voted against Heather Meadows for that reason. And, you know, it's difficult. It's a difficult situation.
What is the
You
parking?
know, I did meet with the firehouse the president of the fire company about this parking plan, and they were satisfied with the parking that we were providing, as a noted point too. We haven't not had conversation yet.
Yeah, but I think they'd be happy with anything they get, because right now they're not entitled to anything.
Well, correct, but this
So
seems
something is
reasonable to
better
me.
than nothing.
Yeah, but I think they saw this as more than just a token, is what it came down to.
The parking for Heather Meadows, do we have is it 2? And you
Well,
can't
before my
use,
time, I don't know.
and I
That
thought
was
you, I
mine.
thought you couldn't use the garage.
No, I thought you adopted that after. So Heather Meadows,
The
you could
garage
use,
in one.
yes, the garage in
And
one,
then
but
after
then
that,
after
we
you
had-
made a text
And we
amendment.
adopted that
Yeah.
you can't use the garage, is that
Correct,
correct?
yeah, that's what, Larry, is that what you think, right? Okay.
Kara calls this, you couldn't use the garage, I remember that.
They couldn't use
They
the
could
garage.
not consider that a parking space.
All right, are there any other comments from either planning commission members, staff, or solicitor, or anything?
I was just, what is the parking situation on Market? Is there parking on the one side in front of these units effectively?
Yeah, currently you can park there.
Okay. So that might be something too. I mean, there is, how much frontage do you have?
You can
Along,
park in front
70
of,
feet.
like the old chiropractor
Okay.
on the street. Howard used to park there all the time.
so that's
I would say, I
Attention
don't
to
know
the
what to
10
think about that.
Would you want to?
spaces.
What?
Would you really want to?
No, Steve did ask, that was something that Steve brought up, like, hey, do you think council would ever consider not allowing parking there if this development would ever go through or go
park on
in?
one side like we changed,
Yeah,
Main Street here,
they park on, change to the other side, you mean?
or whatever.
The other thing we have done, if that were an issue,
I don't know why you
in
want to park.
Collegeville, we did it particularly, which would require us to relocate sidewalk, but we did actually provide, you know, radiuses come out, and then you do protected parking where you basically widen the road in, 4 feet to give you a little bit more space. That would give you a wider road cross section. It would be safer for people feel more comfortable parking in those situations. And that, is one of the things as we go through land development, we could look at as additional parking that would also increase the width so you're not creating that. As you said, people might feel unsafe in the current configuration. That might make them feel a little bit more, at ease. And, we'd be happy to look at that.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
So as a, we're not trying to not solve the problem, just trying to come up with some potential. And I will say from my own world, I did look at this and say, okay, there's a 28 space parking lot we're putting there, and then obviously there's overflow. I know this parking is for other things, but there is a lot of parking in this area for that one overflow event every now and again versus, if it's the routine problem, that's when you run into the issue of, is it parked well enough? And that's where I do think we have enough with what I say is effectively 2.5 on the site. And then you have garages, which don't count, but are still there for some people.
Right. Does anybody else have any comments? So are you looking for a motion to pass this along to council to approve the text amendment, or what is the end result for tonight?
Yeah, Borough Council's gonna see it at May 6th, so if you wanted to say you were, supported or opposed it, I think they're just probably gonna ask what the planning commission's thoughts were on specifically the text amendment. Like, I can certainly tell them that, like, hey, if this passed and you did a text amendment, there are changes they wanna see before this comes back to land development that they would like to see. Whether that's the amount of, units or parking, whatever that is. But text amendment, they don't have a problem, or they do have a problem with this use in that district. That's specifically this use in that district, yeah. But it doesn't mean that you support the land development if this came through, yeah.
This is not land development,
I'll
not
certainly tell them that.
stormwater, anything.
Yeah.
This is just
It's
a
only that use.
preliminary sketch.
I don't want to think I ignored your comment about, we have looked at this from a stormwater facility. If we do end up needing a certain amount of it, we've done the initial evaluation based on the amount of impervious that's out there versus what will be post. We will reduce it by more than is required for an NPDS permit. We've done that in a couple of places before, and then in addition, between landscaping and basically, if we had to, we would end up doing an underground facility under one of the parking lots if we had to get to a certain amount of detention. So that has been evaluated to some
Yes.
extent.
And again, my comment
Yeah.
wasn't so much volume control, more managing what you have.
Correct.
You're not gonna just dump a roof drain in the backyard where the kids are,
No.
except you don't really have a backyard.
No, but we would put it into facilities that could handle it underground. Yeah.
Any planning commission or anything else? Is there a motion for, to move for, against, with conditions, without conditions? Does anybody wanna volley something out? You don't want me to. Would an appropriate, not that the chairman makes motion, but would an appropriate to pass this along to council with the approval of the planning commission, with the one comment that they severely look, or maybe severely is not the word, but they strongly look at the parking within this area and the density to make sure that we're satisfied. And again, coming back from land development, but again, this is a sketch, and part of what Chris wants to know is, what's his density, is he gonna get his approvals before he goes to land development? And so the recommendation is to pass it along to council with the recommendation of approving the text amendment, but have council look at the parking and the density of the units, when they are looking at the whole big picture. Does that sound like a motion that somebody wants to make or not make, or?
And if you don't mind, if I could add and clarify if you agree or do not agree with your consultant's comments and the county planning commission. So if you recommend moving this along, is it with these
Yes.
comments included?
I'm
Some of
sorry,
them
yes, that was understood, yes. That, so we'll have council look at the parking and the density, with the comments in the planning commission, or I'm sorry, council engineer, the borough engineer, and the Montgomery County Planning Commission. Would that be a motion somebody wants to make?
So we can make a motion that we're gonna move the verbiage forward, and that we recommend that council
Looks at the
look at
parking
parking,
and the density,
the density,
and in conjunction with the review of the borough engineer and the Montgomery County Planning Commission.
I'll make that motion.
All right, I have a motion. I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have 1 no, 4 ayes, and I guess that's it.
Thank you all very much.
All right.
This is successful. I'll look forward to working with you during the land development. Everybody's again.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you
a
very
good
much.
evening.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we have old business. We have 4 updates. Jamie.
Just quick updates for land development, Bennett's Court. Chad is working with the developer to address stormwater comments, that were issued back late last fall. And, once those comments are addressed, I know that another email did come through, Chad's gonna review it, and then we'll look at releasing some escrows.
Yeah, they're looking to wrap it up. My concern was with some of the, as Jamie said, stormwater management. They're gonna make some modifications that I suggested in working with their engineer. Once those are done and we get final as-built, we also need videos of the sanitary sewer system. But they're looking, to the point where they're looking to close this out. And at that point, the borough would accept dedication of the sanitary sewer system. Escrow would be released, and then there's an 18-month maintenance bond. And by the end of that maintenance bond, the borough will have to decide if they want a 3-way stop at that intersection. Still have a little bit of time, but keep in the back of our minds, that is one of the criteria that's required.
Do we have to do a police study for the 3-way stop?
I believe your traffic engineer said it's not warranted, but it would be reevaluated at the discretion of the borough.
So what the 3-way stop wasn't warranted?
That's what their suggestion was. But again, now they have real life data that they can go back and, that was before the development was constructed.
Next was Roosevelt Ave. The buildings are under roof, internal house construction's going on. We talked today, I know they're looking for some escrow releases for electric and site or ENS controls, so Chad's looking at those numbers. And then they'll be moving forward, kind of the same thing, finishing up that project, and get those, they're sold or rented. I'm not sure what the developer's gonna do at first. When he came in, he said he was gonna sell them, but I'll confirm, because I know that's a thing for council. So I'll talk to him about that. 200 North Main Street, the Biblical Seminary. We held meetings with them back in March, both with just the borough and both the borough and the township together. They did receive some funding for some remediation on the school. Not building, but just taking out some mold and those things. And then also for what used to be phase 3 is now gonna be phase 1, the building next to the side of the Biblical Seminary. But they have to work through like stormwater, actually their relief for zoning expired in the borough, so they have to come back to the borough to get zoning relief. So, I actually thought they would have come in April because they're kind of really pushing to get the project moving, but haven't seen anything yet, zoning wise and or land development submission.
Is that the building that's in the borough?
Just the Biblical Seminary is the building in there now. So that's actually gonna be phase 3 of their project. So that was gonna be phase 1, and then it was gonna be 2 and 3. Now they're gonna build basically tear the house down that's next to it. That will be their building, then go back out for funding. So how their funding works is the project has to be, built, complete, and occupied before they can go out funding for a second phase. So,
we were being realistic, it's probably like a 10-year project. I don't wanna put that on record, but it's gonna be a while to get all 3 phases funded, especially if they're not funded the first time.
So the part that's in the borough is gonna be at the back?
Later, yes, yeah.
And-
We'll be talking about parking,
The majority of what's in the borough is parking lot.
Right.
yeah.
And we'll still get the electric and sewer out of that, right?
For the building that's current, we will get the electric, and the building that's currently there, we will have the sewer. The other 2 buildings, no.
Okay.
So we get to have it because we have it now.
Right,
For Hatfield Walk, the site utility has been installed, work on the buildings is ongoing. Reached out to, myself and Chad was on site today, did some, looked at the project, said they wanna have people in there by June 1st. So, just see what they have to do to make that happen and get, their escrow released. I don't know if you have an update from,
Yeah, I'll be coming tomorrow afternoon to inspect the proof roll of the driveway, meaning the main access going in, so. Curbing's in, just gonna get out there with a roller and make sure the ground doesn't move before they pave it. So that's a requirement that we have.
When I was on my way over here, I saw there was a couple of guys there looking at that.
Yeah, so they're working on grading now. They've done actually a really, despite some of the mud on the street, for the most part, they've done a good job with their E&S controls. We were out there a number of times just making sure mud's not leaving the site.
So-
Yeah, they're coming down to final grading and they're looking to get this thing wrapped up.
Do they have drywall in the buildings now?
I haven't been in the buildings.
Oh, okay.
to my knowledge, yes, Ryan's been doing inspections out there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I know there was a comment from, Borough Council asked about the driveway, because when you go by, it doesn't look like the driveway is built to what it was, and Chad did look into that,
It looks right to me.
and it,
It just seemed like the plans, it was straight, you know, along the one side.
Yeah, it's not, so on what they did, they shifted it away from the intersection to get as far away from
Sure.
the intersection as they could. So the intersection, or I'll say the intersection with North Main Street is where it needs to be, and then it shifts over to the right, but there's parallel parking on the left, which is why it looks like it waves around so much.
Okay.
But it is per plan.
Oh,
Visually, it looks weird, I
okay. It
understand.
looks narrow too, you know,
Yeah.
okay.
so that's all on the land development end, if there's any other questions.
Alright, anything else for Jamie? Alright, we already did the motion, in support. Our next meeting is May 18th. And do I have a motion, anything else?
I don't have anything.
Alright, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor say aye. Opposed, the ayes have it. Amen.